Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really tough challenge inside the family law system. It's a system that's built to protect kids, but, as we're going to see, can sometimes cause some pretty serious harm. We'll get into it through one wild court case and then look at the bigger picture of high-conflict custody battles.
All right, let's start with a real family court order out of North Carolina that is so out there it made the entire legal system take a hard look at its own power.
So, I want you to just picture this for a second. You're a mom, you're going through a tough separation, you've moved to a new town to be closer to your family, you've got your kids in a new school, and then a judge hands down this order. You have to move back into the house you used to share with your ex.
Now, this goes way beyond just one family's drama. It brings up a huge legal question. Where do you draw the line between a judge doing what's best for a child and a judge stepping on a parent's basic rights?
So, what on earth could make a judge issue an order like that? It seems completely bananas. To get it, we really need to look at the family at the heart of this whole thing.
Okay, so here's the quick timeline. John and Stassi Kanellos split up in 2014. Afterwards, Stassi moved with the kids to a different county. But here's the real kicker. John, the dad, also moved to another county. So by the time they're all in court, nobody, not the mom, not the dad, not the kids, was living in the county where their old house was.
And this is where it gets truly bizarre. The judge decided that Stassi was a fit and proper parent, and he gave her primary custody. Great. But then, in the same breath, he made that custody conditional. He tied her and the kids to a specific house in a county where none of them even lived anymore.
Well, of course, this decision was appealed, and the big question wasn't about who was the better parent. The real issue is much more fundamental. Did the judge even have the legal authority to make that kind of order in the first place?
This slide really draws a clear line in the sand. A judge can look at two parents living in two different places and decide which situation, which already existing situation, is better for the child. But what a judge can't do is try to force a parent to move. They can't just invent a new and improved third option and order someone to live it.
And the appeals court went right back to basics. They looked at the state's constitution. Forcing a parent to live in a specific place isn't just an inconvenience. It's a direct violation of their fundamental rights to liberty and the pursuit of happiness.
So in the end, the appeals court threw out the relocation order. It was a clear case of a judge overreaching their power. And in this case, you could say the system corrected itself. But that brings up a much darker question. What happens when the system itself is the problem?
Right, so the Kanellos case shows a judge making a bad call, but the system eventually caught the mistake. But what happens when the legal process itself becomes the weapon? This gets us into a much bigger and frankly more disturbing pattern we see in these really high conflict cases. A lot of this revolves around a dynamic called parental alienation. And we're not just talking about one parent bad-mouthing the other. No, this is a systematic campaign to completely destroy a child's relationship with their other parent. It's a really severe form of psychological manipulation.
And this is where we find a devastating paradox. A major study found that when parents who are being targeted by this kind of behavior go to court for help, which is often their last resort, the legal process actually makes things worse. Instead of fixing the problem, the court system just becomes more fuel for the fire.
And the data from that study is it's shocking. Look at this. The very parents who were being targeted were the ones who ended up getting punished by the system. Based on completely false accusations, they got hit with restraining orders, they had to have supervised visits with their own kids, some were even arrested.
But, this isn't just about legal maneuvering and statistics. Behind every single one of these numbers is a profound and lasting human cost.
This quote from a parent who was stuck in the system really says it all, doesn't it? It just captures the raw pain of it all, feeling like the whole process has stopped being about protecting a child and has just become, in their words, a sick game of adult revenge.
And that personal testimony is backed up by some really hard data. The study documented just how severe the outcomes are for these parents. We're talking about massive emotional damage, PTSD symptoms, crushing depression and anxiety, all while going completely broke trying to fight a battle they feel like they can't win in court.
And if there's one single number that really captures the scale of this crisis, it's this one, 75%. 3/4 of the targeted parents in that study were prescribed antidepressants just to cope with the absolute emotional devastation of the alienation and the court process itself. Which leaves us here with this final crucial question.
The entire foundation of family law, its whole purpose, is built on doing what's in the best interests of the child. But the evidence shows that in these awful, high-conflict cases, the legal system can become a source of trauma itself, for both the kids and the parents it's supposed to be protecting. It's a deep paradox that the system, frankly, has yet to solve.